Your small farm, homestead, or estate is your castle. It is necessary for it to be physically secure and financially secure. We're going to talk today about the physical security and some of the things that you can do to make your farm safer and just a better lifestyle experience. Farming is one of the most dangerous professions there is. A lot of people get hurt on farms, and here's what you can do about it. I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. So we talk about starting your homestead, getting your farm up and running, and I mentioned very frequently physical security. Now, there's a couple ways people listening think about that. They think about physical security as far as like having a firearm to protect themselves from bear, coyotes, bobcats, cougar, anything that might come for their animals. So there's a legitimate concern on a piece of property that when you have small livestock, for example, chickens, goats, pigs, that outside animals in the wilderness, because now you're in a rural space, may want to come and predate on your animals. And so a lot of folks will have firearm security. They'll have better fencing. They'll have electric fencing that keeps the animals in and keeps the bad animals out. They might have a protective donkey or a protective dog. Now, when we talk about economic challenges, that same mindset goes from predators of animal origin to human predators. There are a number of people on the mailing list, and many of listeners like yourself are noticing the economic instability, civil disruptions that are happening in the cities, and they're very quick to say that if that comes to my town, and there's a lot of controversy about that right now, but if that comes to my town or that comes to your homestead, would you have the skills, would you have the awareness, and would you have the equipment necessary to defend your homestead? Now, we're not talking about a Ruby Ridge or anything where the government's going to come after you, but some people do have that concern. The underlying factor is, though, is if someone were to come onto your property, and this happens more than you can imagine, if someone were to come onto your property to steal your animals or to steal your equipment, would you have proper lighting? Would you have security cameras? Would you have a means of defense in case you're out there and you get caught off guard? A lot of criminals today who are coming to steal high-value assets. So, for example, there have been tractor trailers who show up to steal a tractor trailer load of cows. This is a thing that happens. Meat processing plants get robbed. A lot of this stuff is in the news. If you look for it, you'll find it, but it's not commonly talked about because it doesn't, the way the mainstream media sees it is it doesn't impact a lot of people. It happened out in some rural space. But getting your tractor stolen, getting your side-by-side stolen, getting your truck stolen, these are things that if you were to engage the individual stealing, so you're out in the barn, you left a truck running out front because you're loading the truck up, you're going to check the brake lights or something, and then your truck pulls away, or you find somebody who's there who shouldn't be there, how are you going to respond? So there's the threat protection when it comes to a physical human threat. There's trespassing. So our properties need to be properly the proper signage. I was talking to my insurance agent, and we're getting insurance for a piece of property that has a trail system on it. I offer camping on the property. I will have animals there. There's about a mile of hard road. There's about 5 miles of trails. What are the things that we need to be concerned about? And trespassing is one of the common concerns, especially during hunting season. So you've taken time and effort to build up the ecology of your property. Maybe it's a hunting cabin that you've got set up, and now other people are poaching on your private land. So what do we need to have? Well, we need to have clear property boundaries. In the state of Virginia, we need to have no hunt purple on trees within the property boundary that can be seen by somebody entering the property. So what does that mean? No hunt purple essentially states no liability, no safety, and no hunting. So somebody who crosses that line is going to be at risk, not the homeowner at risk. And that's every state has their own jurisdiction on that. You want to have a sign that says, post it, no trespassing, and has a point of contact, because there are legitimate reasons for hunters to enter your property, especially if they're following wounded prey, but they need to notify the homeowner first. So I'm talking to my insurance guy, and he says, first off, nobody can hunt on the property unless I'm with them. Well, that's kind of messy because I was selling hunting licenses, or I had a couple friends that we had a deal where they could go hunt, and then I'd show up to help them process because I need to learn how to process. But I can't do that. I got to be out there with them. The insurance company said no ATV or recreational vehicles. I said, well, what does that mean? Because I just got a quad that my dad dropped off. I'm looking to use it to drag logs. I understand the safety of the machine, and so I'm not trail riding or racing around the property. But again, they say no ATVs, no recreational vehicles, because the ATV, for example, doesn't have a rollover cage. If you have a tractor on the property that doesn't have a proper rollover or safety equipment attached to it, and you turn that thing over, it will kill you. The same thing with an ATV. If you turn it over, that 200 or 300 pound machine will kill you if you're not properly equipped. So if I'm going to have ATVs on the property, I need to have the proper insurance. I need to require safety equipment. Nobody under 16 can operate it. And then also it has to be properly maintained. Okay, so this is what we're talking about, safety and security for your homestead. It doesn't take much for you to have an injury or for you to be killed or for you to have a devastating theft to set you back on your homestead. So what we do is we plan this physical security so that we can have those things taken care of. Another factor that the insurance company talked about is no unaccompanied minors. So you have a farm. It's multiple acreage. If you have some kid back there drinking alcohol and then they hurt themselves, who is liable? Not the kid because they're a minor. It would be the property owner. So again, if the rule up front says no unaccompanied minors, you have a guest that has a kid wandering around in the woods, they get hurt, it's your responsibility because you need to create a safe environment. We'll talk about that shortly. But again, it needs to be clear that if you see a kid wander onto the property, they're not supposed to be there. They need to leave. They need to leave immediately. Now, in this, I asked the insurance company, what should I do under these situations? So I find somebody on the property who's not supposed to be there, who is hunting. What's the laws, rules, and regulations associated with that? If I find an unaccompanied minor that's riding a four-wheeler around, what should I do there? The answer is never shoot at them. The answer is never yell at them. The answer is actually to get their name, address, and information. So that means I need a way to write this stuff down. I need to be able to punch it in my phone. I need to have visual evidence. And then if they do not cooperate with these things, because again, there are legitimate reasons for someone to be on your property who wasn't authorized to be on your property. So one of those reasons could be they were lost, they have a medical emergency, they're following a wounded or injured animal, they're from the National Park Service or some other government agency. You could have a forestry person out on your property and not realize it. So again, shooting them, detaining them, yelling at them, none of that stuff is useful. It's again, photographic evidence. So have you strategically placed trail cameras on your property to collect photographic evidence of trespassing, theft, or any other issues that you might be aware of? Do you have closed circuit television? Do you have a means of knowing somebody's come onto your property even if you're not near your gate? These are important considerations and factors. But most importantly, the insurance company explained that I need to criminally trespass anybody who is on the property without authorization, who will not provide contact information and details about who they are. So they need to provide me their name, telephone number, and address. Okay, because there's a difference between somebody trespassing who lives out of state and somebody who's trespassing who lives down the street. And then if they refuse to provide this information, I need to, in advance, have photographic evidence of their activities. I need to explain to them, not explain, but just basically tell them, I'm the property owner and you're criminally trespassing. Exit the property immediately. And if they refuse to exit the property immediately, then I am to engage law enforcement. Now, this doesn't make for very good neighbors. You have a neighbor wander onto your property because they're lost from their own property. They yell at you because they're drunk and they give you a hard time, and now you got the police out. There isn't any discretion in this, because in order to enforce a castle doctrine or to eliminate the possibilities of somebody thinking they have an easement in order to stay within the laws, rules, and regulations, there are specific things that you can do. Now, if you don't want to do what I just said, you call your insurance company, because if someone comes on, and this is where I look at it, somebody wanders onto the property, they get hurt or killed, and we'll talk about some of the many ways that can happen, then a claim against your insurance might not pay out, and you could be individually liable, or as a farm business side liable for their stupidity. Can you see how that might be a problem? So you might not get hurt. You might not have to shoot somebody. You might not have to yell at somebody. You might not ever have anybody on your property, but you have to have a plan, or at least a concept of what can be done about trespassers. Now, again, it's not record a YouTube video and put it online and try to make some sensation about it. It's not go talk to the people's parents. It's something you have to work out among your neighbors and community. And then ultimately, when you work it out among your neighbors and community, you create that physical security because, for example, any of the properties that I work on or manage, every neighbor knows who I am. So if my truck's been out there for 3 days, they know where I am or where I might be on the property, and they will call somebody. If some other person's vehicle's out there, or somebody's out there wandering around, or somebody shows up on an ATV, they already know that these things are not permitted on the property, and I get a text message, and then it's something we can take care of. And I do the same thing for their property. I always make sure that when I drive up to my property or a property that I'm managing or working on, that if things look out of the ordinary, I say something. I have contact information. If I'm going to be out on the back part of the property and there's somebody else out there with me, where am I going to be? What am I going to do? Now, the best way to get the core of this is to attend a basic survival course. Now, there's a survival essentials course that I recommend with the Sustainable Homestead Institute. Scott Vernon will talk about some of these things, because when we start talking about what can happen on a piece of property, and I know this isn't a sexy YouTube video or a sexy podcast, but there are a lot of things that can kill, maim, or hurt you. And if you're not prepared, these things can be detrimental to your ability to have a small farm, homestead, or estate. So let's say you have some animals. You have a protective donkey, for example. You could get kicked. You could get squashed. A lot of bad things can happen. Bears, that kind of thing. My dad, for example, was feeding the horse one night, and he was out there for about an hour. It usually takes him like 30 minutes, and he had gotten kicked in the face by the horse and was pretty much out. Now, when we got down there, he had stumbled out of the place. His face was all bloody and everything. But essentially, knowing that he was down feeding the horses and having an idea of the typical amount of time it takes, we were able to react appropriately. And then, of course, get him medical attention because the horse kicked him in the face. Somebody's going to fall off a piece of equipment. I had a case yesterday where I'm working on a riding lawnmower, and I get out there and the lawnmower keeps stalling out. It was fortunately gasoline, but did I have gasoline on site so I can continue the job? I do need to take a case of oil out there because if it needed oil, I didn't have oil on site. But do you have the proper tools? Do you have the proper maintenance? So often I'll see somebody get out on a tractor, and then the tractor has a problem, and then they got to get off the tractor and walk all the way back to the barn to get the tools, or to go get a pickup truck to come back out with the tools that they could have carried on the equipment. I've seen people not understand how to use their equipment and potentially could get hurt in the equipment use. In the case of camping on your land, you don't want to be woken up by a trespasser. You don't want to be woken up by a bear. You don't want to be woken up by a massive change in the weather. So again, that's why I recommend the essential survival skills, to give you that awareness, to give you that understanding of your environment. I'll, in fact, put a link in the description once we do the show notes to recommend some classes for you. But there's going to be, and I'll leave you with 3 key factors. The situational awareness is very important. Understanding what could go wrong and what your response, not your reaction, but your response would be to each thing's going wrong. Number 2, making sure you have an everyday carry that is consistent for the situation. So if you have, in the case of a couple properties I work with, and I don't always carry, but if you have bear, coyotes, things like that, you do need to carry. You need to have access to a firearm or some kind of bear spray or something like that in order to protect yourself, but also to protect your livestock. Finally, you need proper signage so that others are aware that farms are dangerous, and so they're not on your property without your permission. Now, again, you could add to that technology such as trail cams, CCTV, an intercom at the gate, for example. You could add to that having a plan for visitors. So if you have a farm that offers tours, what are the areas in which guests are authorized to be? What are the procedures for receiving a guest, and then making sure the guests have left and they haven't left with your animals? There's a number of factors. Now, if you've got a small farm, homestead, or an estate, and it does interact with the public, I can help you with the operational plan that's necessary so that you can comply with your insurance, that you can also comply with local laws, rules, and regulations when it comes to safety. I'm not encouraging you to invite out safety inspectors and things like that, but there may be regulations where, for example, if you're milking animals, the health department may come out and inspect your equipment. So being mindful of that is going to make sure that you don't surprise yourself when a health inspector shows up and you're wondering who the hell they are. Like, you can go meet that person and know when they come out, or when your veterinarian comes out, or when the neighbor's cows get loose. You can be more aware of your situation. We can also help you with the design plan that makes your property safer. There are factors such as erosion, how you're running the power, how you're running water, that the folks on the YouTubes are certainly not qualified to help you with, and we can connect you with vendors who can do that, that are going to do it in a safe way. But ultimately, are you thinking about your physical security? There's multiple aspects of physical security that are important for your on-site, but also when you leave the property, also for the protection of your animals, also for the protection of your equipment. If someone's stealing equipment from you and you're properly insured and you've got good evidence and you followed the insurance's recommendations and you didn't leave the keys in the vehicle, then you can just get an insurance claim. There's no need to engage the person or to have a confrontation with firearm or to defend yourself unless your life or liberty or your family's at risk. These things are not, they're kind of boring. They're not as sensational as people make them out to be, but a hot-headed response, because you didn't prepare, because you didn't have a plan, a hot-headed response could get you killed. With the way the economy's going, with the way food prices are going, there will be cases where people will show up on your property looking for food. And they may show up with your permission by coming for your farm stand and buying products and services from you, but they might decide that they're entitled to it, or they might decide they're just going to come steal it, or they might decide that your animals should be freed. That's another issue here too. There are protesters showing up at farms. Would you have the skill set and would you have the awareness to minimize the risk associated with these things? That's where we can help you at Prosperity Homestead. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and this has been about your physical security. When your physical security is maintained, you feel comfortable, more confident, you have a better lifestyle, less worry and frustration. And of all the things that can happen, being a little paranoid about it and having a plan is better than having to react. We're here to help you transform your land into highly valuable and productive resources, whether it's a small farm or a homestead. And we do that through courses, newsletters, and other materials that are available at www.prosperityhomestead.org. We have a network of trainers and folks and experiential opportunities that are available here in Martinsville, Henry County, and this is Virginia. And we would love to see you. We'd love to hear your questions. We'd love to show you practical examples of what we teach in the podcast or on the video programs. Again, I want to thank you for being a part of what we do. Without you as part of our community, I wouldn't do half the stuff that I do. I really enjoy working with folks who are independently minded, who are critical thinkers, and who want freedom. And so you're in the right place if you want those things. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Again, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead.